Before we get started, there will be potential spoilers in the video to come. Ladies and gentlemen, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be ranking each of the lieutenants in Bleach. This is part of my ranking every faction in Bleach series. Just like in my captain's video, I'll be ranking each character based on design, zanpakuto / bankai, and overall how I feel about each character. Some of the characters may overlap, so if you want a detailed explanation on why I put a character in a certain tier, check out the previous videos. I also forgot to mention within the first video, each character will be ranked comparatively within the faction. So for example, how Rukia was a lieutenant and became a captain, in this video she'll be ranked comparatively to the other lieutenants. This video is completely subjective, so you may disagree with some of my picks. Also, my pronunciation may just be god-awful, so I apologize in advance. And without further ado, let's get into it. To start up the list, we have Sosuke Aizen. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on him because I already did that in the captain's video. But I did want to highlight the time we do see him as a lieutenant during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. This is where we see him conducting his holification experiments on the Visors. It's a fantastic arc to show just how manipulative Aizen really is from the beginning. There's even a line where Shinji says, "I knew all along from the moment you were in your mother's womb." It is a fantastic quote to just show how, from even the beginning, Aizen was manipulating everyone around him. And I just love Aizen as a character. He is fantastic. Next up, we have Akon. Now, Akon is the lieutenant of the 12th Division right after the 1,000-Year Blood War. And as the vice president of the Research and Development Division, he's not much of a fighter. His main role is his technological expertise in supporting the other Soul Reapers. He's the one that detects the Arrancar invasion as well as the Quincy invasion. He's also shown fixing other Soul Reapers' bankai / zanpakuto like he did with Ikkaku's zanpakuto. He also single-handedly opens up the Garganta to allow Ichigo to get to the Soul Society during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. There's also an amazing scene where he basically explains to Nemu the entire project that ultimately created Nemu. And overall, I think Akon's design is really cool. Overall, he's a good character. Next up, we have the newest member of the Gote 13, Atau Rindo. Now, he becomes a lieutenant during the Echoes from Hell one-shot, and we don't see much of him, but what we do see is his Shikai, which, because he's deaf and mute, he can't say his release command, but instead he inscribes the words "give birth" on his zanpakuto, which then it takes the form of a segmented whip that have Shikigami talismans on them. And then he can write the words of animals and they become that animal. For example, during the chapter, we see him write the word hawk on the talismans, and then they become hawks. I think his design overall is really cool, and I hope we get more of the Hell arc, because I would love to see this character more. But for now, he's going to go in the good category. Next, I'm going to go over all the characters in the question mark category. These are characters we see little to nothing within the main source material, or just within promotional artworks for the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. I'm going to at least try to give a little bit of an explanation of where I would put them based on design, but other than that, we know nothing really about them, so they're going to go in the question mark category at the end of the day. First up, we have Chikane Iba. She looks like a very strict woman. I like how in her promotional artwork, she's even scolding Rhodes. Overall, I'd probably just put her in meh, but overall, I think her design's pretty decent. Next on the list, we have Genshiro Okikiba. Now, I'm not gonna lie, before doing research for this video, I forgot this dude even existed. But he becomes a co-lieutenant of the 1st Division. And without more chapters of the Echoes from Hell arc, I can't really say much about him. Like, I'd probably just put him in meh based on design, but we just know nothing about him. Next up, we have Jinemon Kotsubaki. which he is the 7th Division Lieutenant under Love during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. And he's also the father of Sentaro Kusubaki. Now, overall, I think his design is really cool. Like I said, we don't know much about these characters, but like, I'd probably put him in either the upper good category or possibly like bottom of grade tier. I think his design's really cool. He looks very intimidating, and overall, I like his design. Next up, we have Marinoshin Omaida. Now, I'm not gonna lie, just like Marechiyo, a little bit of a spoiler, I don't really like their design all that much. We don't know much about him besides he was the former lieutenant of the 2nd Division under Yoruichi during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, and I don't know, the design for me, I don't really like that much. Like, it would either be in meh or straight up dislike. Because we know nothing about him, obviously he's in the question mark category, but I am not a fan of their design. Next up, we have the former lieutenant of the 4th Division, Sonosuke Yamada. Now, we know almost nothing about him through the source material, but what we do find out during the Camphor World light novels is that he is a medical and healing expert that helps out mainly the nobles and the aristocratic associates. He basically is the reason that Hikone is created, because Tokunada basically commissions him to use Gremmy's brain to help him create Hikone, which basically is an artificial human formed of different Shinigami, Quincy's, and different Fullbringers. And he's basically responsible for all that. Overall, I think his design's really cool. I would probably put him in the great category. Next up, we have Chojiro Sasakibe, the former lieutenant of the 1st Division. Now, if you would have asked me where I would have put Chojiro prior to seeing the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, I probably would have put him in either meh or like the bottom half of good. But the 1,000-Year Blood War arc completely changed my perception of how I think about this character. The flashback we got showing him reveal his bankai and leave a lethal wound on Yamamoto was incredible. It just makes me wish we would have seen more of him, but unfortunately, his death came right at the beginning of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. And I wish we would have seen more of him, because I think overall his design is really cool and his bankai looks incredible. It just sucks that we didn't get to see more of him in the original anime, seeing that he was the right-hand man of Yamamoto. Next up, we have Hiyori. Now, she is the former lieutenant of Squad 12 during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. And I absolutely love her role within the arc. She just has on-site beef with Kisuke and Shinji, which leads to so many comedic moments. And she just has on-site beef with everyone. There's even moments with when she's training Ichigo, as well as her little argument with Hitsugaya during the Fake Katakura Town arc. I overall love her personality, and I think it's just hilarious, her just arguing with everyone she comes in contact with. And even as a Visor, her fighting style is really cool. She has that giant, like, serrated butcher blade that I think is aesthetically just super cool. And she has a lot of cool techniques, like the triple Sero. Overall, I think Hiyori is just a good overall character. Next up, we have the lieutenant of the 11th Division, Ikkaku. Ikkaku has always been one of my favorite lieutenants. He has a prominent role in almost every single arc, and I absolutely love all of his fights that he's a part of. His amazing fight against Ichigo in the Soul Society arc, the flashback of him versus Kenpachi where he's told to get stronger, his fight against the Fraxion Idrad where he unleashes his incredible bankai. He also has an amazing fight during the Fullbringer arc against Mo, and his fight between Bambietta during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. I absolutely just love seeing Ikkaku fight. He's just one of my favorite characters overall. Next up is Isane. Now, just like in my captain's video, I stated how she doesn't really do that much during this story. I like her design overall, but unfortunately we just don't really get to see that much of her. And it's kind of a shame. I really wish we got to see more of the 4th division, but it being the support / healing corps, unfortunately it just doesn't get as much limelight as some of the other divisions. Next on the list we have the former lieutenant of Squad 13, Kaien Shiba. Even though his time in the story is short, his impact on Rukia's character is massive. Kaien is introduced to us as a kind-hearted mentor during his flashback, but unfortunately in A Night of Terror he's possessed by a hollow and dies by lunging himself into Rukia's sword. Then during the Arrancar arc, Rukia is faced with Kaien again after Yuro takes control of him and they have their fight. I overall love Kaien's design and character, and I also think he has a really cool zanpakuto ability. I just wish we could have seen more of him in this story. Next up we have the Lieutenant of Squad 3, Izuru Kira. Now, I always loved Izuru's design. I absolutely love the fact that his zanpakuto is like this executioner style of like anything he slashes, it like increases the weight, almost immobilizing his target and like hooking his blade around their neck to do the final execution. I always found it really cool. And I absolutely love the panel of Izuru standing in front of the moon during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc when he goes to face off against Lily Barrow's like clone / the like bird things that he faces off against. I always found that panel / like the scene in the anime to be incredible. Next up we have Kinone and Sentaro. I'm just gonna group them together just because typically we normally see them together in the story. Now, they become the lieutenants of the 4th Division and 13th Division respectively by the end of the series during the Hell Arc. And hopefully we get more of the Hell Arc chapters because I'd love to see more of them. Throughout the story, they're just kind of background characters that report in every once in a while, and they don't get that much time to shine, and I hope to see more of them in the future. Next up, we have the Super Lieutenant of Squad 9, Mashiro Kuna. Now, I always loved her design. When she dons the Hollow Mask, I feel like her look in general is fantastic. And I absolutely love her fight during the Fate Katakura Town against Wonder Weiss. She displays some of the most devastating and creative named moves in the entire series, like the Mashiro Super Kick, the Mashiro Drop Kick, and who can forget the Mashiro Super Sero. These moves are some of the most devastating in this series. But all jokes aside, I really hope we see more of her during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc with the reworked fight against Gerard. We saw that the Visors showed up at the end of Core 3, and I hope that they play a huge role within the fight. And seeing that Mashiro is there, I'm hoping we get to see more of her. Next up, we have the Lieutenant of Squad 5, Momo. Now, I just feel bad for Momo. She just takes L after L after L in this series. When Aizen was first shown to be quote-unquote murdered during the Soul Society arc, she blames Gin for the problem, and then fights Izuru and Gin until Toshiro Hitsugaya basically steps in to stop the fight. And then it's at the hands of Hitsugaya again during the Fate Katakura Town arc where she shows up to try to fight Aizen, and Aizen uses his zanpakuto to trick Hitsugaya into stabbing her. She just takes so many unfortunate L's in this series. But other than that, I think her Shikai is super cool, as well as just her kind personality in general. Mr. Tomo 2304 did a video about her bankai ideas, or like videos on what her bankai could potentially be, and I wish some of those were canon, because I think her ability is really fascinating, and I wish we got to see more of it. But for now, I'm just gonna put her in the great category. Hopefully we get something of her in the Echoes from Hell arc, because I'd love to see an expansion on her character. Next up, we have the co-lieutenant of Squad 1, Nanao. Now, Nanao, for the most part in the series, is kind of in the background, with her captain taking most of the limelight and most fights. But the main part she shines is during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc and her fight between Lily Barrow. I absolutely love all the flashbacks and character development we get from her with her interactions with Shunsui and Nanao's mother. And the reveal of her zanpakuto, the ritual blade she uses to defeat Lily Barrow. I absolutely adore that fight. I think it's one of the best in the entire arc. And I love the fact that Nanao finally gets a fight to shine and show off her power instead of her just being in the background. The one thing that I wish Nanao did more was interact with the other lieutenant of Shunsui. During the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, Lisa was the lieutenant of Shunsui, and I would love to see more interactions between these two, just to reflect on how they think about Shunsui, because both of them have hilarious interactions with him, and I'd like to see their connection after all the years of them being apart. And I might as well talk about Lisa now. As a character, I absolutely love her aesthetic, as well as her fighting style. Her visored mask and her zanpakuto is so cool. And I love her fight between her and Haribel. It's one of the coolest fights within the Fate Katakura Town arc. Overall, I absolutely love both of these characters. Next up, we have the former lieutenant of Squad 12, Nemu. Nemu became one of my favorite characters throughout the story. She is part of so many incredible fights during this series. Like her and Mayuri's fight against Uryu, her and Mayuri versus Xyloporo, and my absolute favorite fight of hers, her and Mayuri versus Pernida during the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. I absolutely love seeing her development between her and Mayuri. It started out with Mayuri absolutely abusing her throughout the entire series. And there was a moment that while watching that fight, I thought that Mayuri somehow would have changed, and you could tell by seeing Nemu die in front of him that it definitely impacted him. But unfortunately, he's still a dick, and he still basically laughed it off and was like, I created the ultimate artificial human. And by the end of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc into the Echoes of Hell arc, we do see that he created a new Nemu. I always like the concept of Mayuri trying to create the ultimate artificial human. And of course, with Nemu being there through the entire series, Nemu is one of my favorite lieutenants, just through the fact that we see that development and how she basically affects Mayuri's personality. She's just overall a fantastic character. Next, we have the lieutenant of Squad 10, Rangiku Matsumoto. Now, even though on the surface her character might just be fan service / comedic relief, she is part of without a doubt, one of my favorite moments in the entire series, which is her interaction and her farewell to Gin Ichimaru. She is the catalyst to basically Gin's entire plot to him betraying the Soul Society and him siding with Aizen to ultimately attempt to kill him. And despite that, she also is a part of a ton of moments throughout the series because she gets a lot of screen time. I love her interactions between her and Hitsugaya, her and her former captain Ashine. A lot of their moments are just hilarious. And I also like some of her fights throughout this series, like her fight between Mila Rose during the Fate Katakura Town arc, and her fight between Basby during the Thousand Year Blood War arc, just to name a few. Rangiku is one of my favorite characters, despite what people might think of her. I absolutely love her look, her personality, almost everything about her character. Next up, we have the Lieutenant of Squad 6, Renji Abara. Renji is a part of some of the best fights within this series. He has an incredible fight between Ichigo during the Soul Society arc, which sets up their basically everlasting friendship throughout the series. He has an incredible fight between him and Byakuya. The fight between him and, I'm not even going to try to pronounce Xyloporo's brother, but he also goes up against Xyloporo. And then his incredible fight between him and Maste Masculine during the Thousand Year Blood War arc. I also love the look he has during that fight. His new look when he comes back from the Soul Palace's training is amazing. I also have to mention his zanpakuto Zombie Maru, as well as the bankai. These are some of the coolest looking blades / bankais in the story. Say what you want about Renji, I think his aesthetic is so cool. I always loved his character from the moment I started reading the series / watching it. And the final note is, I absolutely love his connection between the next character, Rukia. Now, I went over Rukia in my last video about her impact on the series. These two are some of my favorite characters within the story. Next up, we have the co-lieutenant of Squad 9, Shuhei Hisagi. Now, Hisagi aesthetically has always been one of my favorite characters. I love his Shikai Kagashini, as well as his bankai revealed in Camp for Your Own World, as well as the filler arc where we see all the zanpakuto spirits. I just love the aesthetic of Shuhei. I think overall, he's one of the coolest designed characters in the series when it comes to the lieutenants. And I also absolutely love the fight between him and Tozen. I feel like it was a fight that needed to happen, and I love how that fight went down. As well as his interactions between Kensei and his co-lieutenant Mashiro. Overall, I absolutely love Hisagi, and I just hate how in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, he almost is he just takes so many L's during the Thousand Year Blood War arc, which is so unfortunate. He gets shot down by Lily Barrow. He gets absolutely demolished by Maste Masculine. They did my boy dirty in that arc. Next up, we have the former lieutenant of Squad 7, Tetsuzaimon Iba. Now, just like I stated in my previous video, he unfortunately just doesn't do much, and it's a shame because I hope we see more of him in the Echoes of Hell arc if we get any more chapters now that he's a captain, because he just didn't get enough spotlight in the original anime / manga. And it's a shame because I like Shikai and I overall think he's a pretty cool looking character, but just like the others in this tier, he just doesn't really do much. Next up, we have the former lieutenant of Squad 11, Yachiru. Now, throughout the series, she plays the role of a very comedic, childish, and overall very funny character. And I absolutely love her dynamic with her and Kenpachi. I always found the way they met very interesting, as well as a lot of the lore we got of her during the Thousand Year Blood War arc. We also get a little bit of insight due to Kubo's personal Q&A website, Club Outside, where he states that basically Yachiru and Nozarashi play the same / similar roles to the way Tanza Zangetsu and Zangetsu operate, which I always found really interesting because it's one of the only other times we see that zanpakuto spirit dynamic play into effect. And I also loved the reveal of that during the Thousand Year Blood War arc with Kenpachi's fight against Gerard. Overall, I think Yachiru plays a really good role as a lieutenant, And as a side note, I think it's absolutely hilarious how she is like the former chairman of the Women's Association and the Soul Society. I just think Yachiru's just an overall really fun character. Next up, we have the Lieutenant of the 8th Division, Yuyu Yaihara. Just like Rindo, she gets introduced during the Echoes of Hell arc, and she's very fascinating. She has a personality unlike any other character in the entire series. She's very adept with technology, she has social media. Even when she first meets Ichigo, she straight up goes up to him and tries to take a selfie and post it on social media, which I find super hilarious and very fascinating because she's nothing like almost any other character within this series. And I would hope to see more from her during the Echoes of Hell arc if we get any more chapters of her, because I found her character very interesting. Finally, to round out the list, we have the Lieutenant of Squad 2, Marechiyo Omaida. Now, for the entire list, you are probably wondering where this tier was put into effect. And honestly, it is for Marechiyo. I absolutely dislike Marechiyo. I don't like the way he looks. His Shikai is just not that impressive. Literally, when he reveals his Shikai for the first time, it's this giant, like, mace with, like, these spikes on it, and you're thinking, like, oh man, this clearly, like, will do some damage. Ichigo literally breaks it in one unarmed strike, defeating Marechiyo. And even during one of the coolest fights in this series, Soifone versus Baragon, Marechiyo's only major role in that fight is cutting off Soifone's arm to stop it from decaying. Literally just, I don't know what else to say. I just dislike Marechiyo as a character, his aesthetic. He's like one of the only characters in the series that I can confidently say I just dislike. And that's just my own personal opinion. You may differ from it. You may say he belongs in meh, good. But like for me, I just don't really like his character. And that's the list. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as ring the notification bell to stay up to date with all of my videos. Next video in the series, I'll be ranking the Espada, which have some of my favorite characters within this series. I would also love to hear what your favorite lieutenants are down in the comment section below. And now, kick it to that end screen.
Yeah, put me in a box. I be with my OGs busting off blocks. I be going OT, got me going hard. You don't even know me, don't know who you are. What you gonna do? Posted with my rap friends, teach you how to boom. Put me on a fat head, never gonna lose. Eat it like I'm Pac-Man Jones, I'm a Bengal, I'm a motherfucking man.